Welcome everybody to the NLC Week 2. We have had a huge amount of matches going on last week and plenty of League of Legends to talk about, but we are moving into our second week here and I have shaken up the desk a little bit. This time around we'll have Orcs joining us alongside Gulborg and Veteran. I'm very pleased to have you gents on the desk with me today. I know there's lots to talk about. We're going to be breaking down last week's matches. We're going to be looking forward to this week's matches. But before we do, I do have to say thank you to Barclays. This is presented by Barclays, and we are powered by Curry's gaming PC World. That's it. I'll have to double check.
Got there in the end.
Got there in the end. But yes, thank you so much to those guys for helping us out here at the NLC. Anyway, let's move on and let's talk about last week's matches first, because I feel like it's only just to start with what happened last week, and then we can start to look towards the matches that we've got coming up this week. First of all, Orcs, obviously you were casting a lot of the games last week. Anything that stood out to you in terms of either surprises or games that you really think had a lot to discuss? Because I know I could name a few, but just from your perspective, obviously you went on the desk last week. So anything that really stood out to you from last week?
I think for the most part, a lot of the games were a little bit predictable. There were some quite one-sided affairs, but I think there were these occasional matches where there was either an upset or even with the Fnatic game, they still won it out. But that one was a big shocker to me. So with Fnatic Rising being 3 times reigning champion, and then they come into this matchup against Barrage miles ahead and they very nearly throw it away. And we can actually see the game here. And yeah, in the end, they did manage to come out ahead, but it just wasn't clean. MagiFelix looked completely off sorts, getting solo killed by a Kassadin at a really early stage of the game. And then it just felt, honestly, a bit sloppy from them. Dan was stellar, and we expected as much. But for the rest of the team, there was definitely question marks, particularly between Xmadi and MagiFelix.
Isn't it funny how the guy who got the most wrong prediction just said it was the predictable? I just wanted to throw that out there, but he's totally right about the Fnatic series too. We did expect more from the solo laners. We were actually, even before the game started, talking about how when these guys are the reigning champions coming into the split, they should dismantle Barrage. Let's be fair, they should be more rough against them. And to be fair, it was way too close, closer than it had to be. And I feel like a lot of it came down to it was the first game of the split. And I actually believe in the Fnatic guys. I do believe they have excellent players who will be able to bounce back. They had 1 week of rest where they're able to look at that bot, because God knows there was a lot to look at. But I feel like just knowing the Fnatic players that they will have recuperated.
I mean, you got there in the end.
I mean, either way, when it comes to that Fnatic game, like, I do think Kassadin can pick up kills from 6 onwards, but generally you have to be completely unaware of how powerful he actually is as a champion at that point. And it just seemed to me like MagiFelix had a massively off game. But at the same time, I'm kind of excited about Hadron. Like, Hadron saw his shot versus a mid laner you have to think that everybody will be respecting, and he took it, and he almost was able to carry that game until we got to the 5-on-5 team fight where they vastly overestimated how powerful they were at that point. But it's good that we see these rays of hope even from the lower tier teams, we can say, of the league, trying to smash up against the top 4.
Yeah, and obviously we've had a very, very exciting set of matches from previous weeks. Now, I do have to quickly correct myself on something. My head was in UKLC mode. I actually shouted out the wrong set of sponsors for our NLC. So obviously, thank you to Corsair and El Giganten for sponsoring the NLC. That was the wrong set. My head was in UKLC mode, and it's completely my bad. So apologies to those guys. Yeah, thank you very much to Corsair and El Giganten. You guys are what makes the NLC possible. So obviously, like, I think the big matchup that I kind of wanted to briefly discuss with you guys, and the one that I think generated the most discussion and the most controversy, especially for Veteran, was the Tricked versus Dusty matchup.
No.
I think if you're going to go back and watch any of the games from last week, from a pure entertainment standpoint, the Tricked versus Dusty matchup was incredibly entertaining to watch. Veteran, can you run me through that particular game?
I mean, there was a level 1 that quite clearly threw the entirety of Dusty off kilter. They didn't expect to lose out so heavily on the level 1 play that was made really early on in the game. And then, though, you had this magnificent comeback story from Dusty, where they played economy very well. And it wasn't just that we could say that they were against the worst opposition, because Tricked really came in running. They really came in trying to, like, batter through the base of Dusty as fast as humanly possible. So it's not like Dusty were able to achieve the comeback feedback that they were achieving against like what we could say would be like a bottom tier team, right? They were very, very heavily matched this entire game. But what they did in playing their economy around the Gangplank was really, really beautiful. And what they did in taking the fights that they had to take and ignoring the fights they didn't have to, so that they could scale up, so they could win those fights, was really, really, really good until it wasn't, until they literally made all the wrong choices. All the choices that they had been making up to that point had just gone thrown out of the window. It was insane to me, actually, like how they could throw a game that they had so intelligently crawled back. It's a question of consistency of Dusty, but we can see them be very consistent up to a point. So maybe it's when push comes to shove, we need to see that they can be like the clutch team in those scenarios, and that they aren't just a team that needs to have like a large breadth in terms of a lead. Maybe if it comes down to these singular decisions and they're aware of it, they might lose judgment. But in terms of like a consistently intelligent macro-based team, they were doing concepts that ordinarily we see LEC teams struggle to execute. So as a team, I'm still very excited for them. As individuals, I don't feel like we've been able to see the proper Dusty yet. Tricked, on the other hand, they looked incredibly strong as individuals early on. Obviously, they're a very early game spiking team, but they were also playing very intelligently around the map, and maybe one of these two teams could be a team that upsets the top four.
I think more than anything as well, this is kind of worrying for the other two teams in their group, which is M&M Barrage. Dusty and Tricked will face them off today. And I think their matchup has sort of put them on a sort of higher standing. And there's only going to be 4 playoff spots available to Group B. I think Barrage and M&M really need to sort of step up if they're going to be able to contest those, because right now, Dusty and Tricked, in my mind at least, are kind of locked in for those if they keep up this level of play.
Yeah, I think even from my end, when I was listening to you guys talk about that game off stream, I was both just enthralled by what was going on, as well as the way that you guys were talking about it as well. It was definitely one that you should go back and have a look at if you're interested in watching some entertaining League of Legends, plus seeing how someone can throw their win condition out the window so heavily. But nonetheless, I think we had, I think you guys briefly touched on it, but we did have that Fnatic Barrage game, which we have some highlights from as well, I believe. That was a game where you talked about Magi Felix maybe having a little bit of an off game, but we have the probably the most exciting matchup today is going to be that Fnatic versus Monster Rugby Gaming one. And I don't want to dive into it too much here, but I know you guys were talking about the jungle matchup being one of the most important in this particular game, being Dan, the best European jungler potentially in the ERLs, Max Law returning from a very storied competitive career, making his comeback. Gulborg, what are we expecting this to be a jungle duel? Are we expecting this to be purely jungle matchup between this team?
Not necessarily. Having a look at Dan without diving too much into it, in the former seasons, he was a kind of jungler that was always complemented by his strong, clear pathing. And I feel like this meta just suits him way better than the former patches because, well, Graves is there, and we saw how he was able to completely, even though his solo laners had a bit of an off day against Barrage, he was still the driving factor for them. And have we had a look at Max Law's jungle game? He was a bit of a more selfless jungler. He played a lot for his laners and through them. So I feel like, just to sum it up quickly, it's not necessarily going to become a jungle matchup, no.
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be very much around what the laners and Munster are facilitated to do by Max Law. If Unforgiven and Hivik are allowed to just sort of take control of the lane, I definitely think they can challenge Mighty and Bravado. And if that becomes the big issue, then it doesn't matter what Dan can do in the jungle, because if his lanes are collapsing around him, he won't be able to get that huge CS advantage that he normally looks for, so that he can be that reliable carry in the later stages. But again, that depends whether Fnatic opt to show up, because if Max Law's early pathing, which is a bit inefficient as he leans towards trying to assist his laners, doesn't end up working out, then Dan will just come out hugely ahead, and the laners should be able to scale well, because they normally do perform for the most part in the later game team fights, as we've seen them historically.
I think that's just going to be a function of jungle in general anyway, right? Like, if you're planning a path going in a certain direction because you think the matchup on that side will be in a certain state by the time you get there, and they mess up mechanically, then suddenly your entire path is off kilter, and there are so many options available to enemy jungler that there weren't before, and there's so many dangerous spots that you have no choice but to go towards because of the function of your camps anyway. If the laners can step up, they can facilitate really strong junglers, but there are two very strong junglers in the meta right now that they can pick up, and I expect to see hotly contested contest when we talk about these things, like Graves, like Nidalee. At those points, maybe you can somewhat ignore the priorities in lane because your job is to get the camps and get out, and you have a lot of tools in your kit to be able to do so. So I expect to see these junglers be very heavily contested when we talk about people contesting Dan, people contesting Maxwell, and Maxi, who really wants to keep showing that he can have a really strong, consistent set of performances in the NLC and make a name for himself.
Well, speaking of, we obviously briefly touched on one of today's matches. Let's take a look at today's schedule so we can have a brief rundown of it and have a look at the games that we've got coming your way. We have the day starting off with BT XL versus Riddle. Then we're going to follow up with M&M versus Dusty, Trix versus Barrage, and Fnatic Rising versus Munster Rugby Gaming. That's the one that we were just briefly touching on there. But I actually think every single game today is going to be incredibly close. I genuinely feel like maybe the BTXL versus Riddle one could be slightly beat in my eyes XL favor anyway. I know Gulborg is the Danish fanboy down there, but I actually do think we've got a really, really good set of games on our hands today. And obviously the big ticket match being that Fnatic Rising versus Munster Rugby Gaming one. But honestly, every match feels like it could be very competitive here, Dan.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I feel like week one, we did have some games like XL against Godsent went how people expected. It was very one-sided, but Riddle is a real challenge for them. We had a lot of interviews with players last week, and a lot of them were saying there was this sort of top 4 teams that stood out above the rest. That was Fnatic, XL, it was Riddle and Munster, and we're actually seeing the 2 pairs pair off against each other today. So that'll at least set us a sort of ranking between those top 4, and it should be a close one between those. Even if XL is from the desk slightly favored, Riddle definitely should be the first team that can give them a fight and potentially show some of their weaknesses.
Yeah, 100%, because we can talk over and over again about how strong XL's bot lane looked, but we haven't really seen them be tested against another experienced bot lane, right? At the same time, we can say maybe Wendelboe and Ray J didn't look so hot in their game versus Ents, but at the same time, how much respect are they really giving Ents's bot lane anyway? Ents's bot lane actually got one of the most powerful bot lanes we've seen, the BTXL bot lane of Ezreal Karma from the opening game last week. And even though they were struggling, they didn't lose it anywhere near as much as we saw the previous matchup from Godsent lose it very heavily from even level 1 onwards, right? Like, in fact, they ended up winning 2v2. It came down to the wire, but they were still winning, right? We haven't really seen either of these teams tested. We can talk about Maxi all we want, but we did see some mechanical misplays on Maxi, and we haven't seen Maxi versus a team that will test them very heavily. And one big thing that we saw Hatrix doing was playing with his jungler, which is something that we wanted to see him start doing. And we want to see how Maxi deals with that sort of thing. It can be dealt with, especially if they're thinking you have to play really heavily with Graves in that regard. But we need to see if Maxi can do it. These are all questions that we just don't know the answer to because we haven't seen top teams play top teams. But today we will, and I'm very excited to see how that goes.
And obviously, on your side of things here, Gulborg, you were the only person, I think, to predict Riddle in that first matchup. I need to double check. There might have been someone else, but talk to me about that.
It's me. Don't worry about it. It's me. You don't even have to double check it. It's me.
He'll confirm it.
So, yeah, and I want to actually bring it back to the point that the veteran did just make. How about Hatrix and Taxa? Most of the time comes in to help them with the jungle, try to get the clear in. But Maxi is that kind of jungler who won't even need the help of his solo laners. They're extremely efficient. The solo laners about their waves and when they want to leave the lane and when they want to stay in the lane. And Maxi is extremely confident. I don't know if it's his communication or if that's just his playstyle, but he's all. The way we've seen him play is that he just go and takes that camp. And we did see it slip up a bit in the Ents game where he actually died because of it. He could have gotten it out, but it was more of a mechanical misplay than the idea of it. And I feel like that Taxa is finally going to get tested too, because we talked about how the bot laners are going to get tested. I think the 2v2 is where Hatrix and Taxa for real is going to be tested. We talked about, oh, we got Hatrix in, let's see how he messes with this BTXL roster, and then they just completely dismantled the Godsent roster. But now, with this Riddle lineup, with Senkux, who had a blast of a game on His LeBlanc, and the solo lane of Doxy on Mordekaiser back then, I feel like we're up for an interesting start of a banger here, and I can't wait to get it going.
Yeah, and something I'm curious about is really what are they going to pick for Hatrix in this situation? Because a big thing we were talking about last week was Hatrix stepping into the shoes of Special. We're saying how Special facilitate the team a lot because he would create his own pressure mid, rotate that down to the bot lane, and then provide them the numbers advantage to make plays. And we were like, will Hatrix do the same? We haven't seen him do that historically. Has he changed his play style? He picks Galio. And obviously Galio is a champion who is sort of, his kit facilitates that heavily. And the question for me is going to be, are they going to stick with that line of picking those champions for hat tricks? And what happens if they don't? If they pick something that is more lane focused for hat tricks, more about him, pick him up a CS lead rather than using that advantage he gets some priority to move bot, will we see XL not be able to live up to the sort of play they had when they had special in the mid lane?
And we had an interview of Hatrix where he said he's simply changing playstyle based on how he perceives the meta to be. But there can be such a thing as too much grouping. Like Goldberg points out that Senkux had a really, really strong game on his LeBlanc, and a lot of that was because they weren't inefficient with their groupings. They weren't just grouping for the sake of it. Maxi understood that, the laners understood that. That allowed Senkux to have pressure in lane, such that we didn't see from Hatrix yesterday, but maybe that's champion dependent. Again, there are questions that we don't necessarily know the answer to. It could just be a champ-dependent thing for him. Maybe we'll see him overgroup again, though, because a lot of those did seem unnecessary, and I actually think Riddle esports maybe have a better read on the jungle meta overall, but I think I trust the lanes of XL overall more. That's my take on it right now, and that's why I've gone my way of predictions.
Of course, of course. We're going to be diving into that first matchup pretty soon. Now, before we go to a quick break, I want to show you the standings. I actually should have done this a little bit earlier. Bad post. Let's have a look at the standings here for Division A. You can see Nordavin at the top with a 2-0 victories so far. XL and Riddle, who are due to play first, both are 1 apiece. Godsent 1-1, and Ents and Team Singularity down there at 0-2. Let's move over to Division B and have a look at the scores on that side of things. And no surprises, Fnatic, Monster, and Tricked all taking their wins. Tricked obviously getting that big win over Dusty, which was probably one of the matches of the week last week. But again, we haven't played as much throughout Division B. Obviously, we're at the start of the season. Let's not read too much into the standings right now. There's plenty of things that can happen and change, and we'll probably see these standings shift a huge amount over the coming weeks. But nonetheless, guys, we're going to go to a quick break. When we're back, we will deep dive into our first game of the day, BTXL versus Riddle. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to dive into our first game, BTXL versus Riddle. But before we do, when we were talking about these teams last week, when we had the interviews with the players, we were consistently asking, who do you think is top 4 in the NLC? And Fnatic, XL, Munster, and Riddle were always the answers, pretty much categorically across the board, even from the teams that weren't part of that top 4. Is this the first top 4 versus top 4 game, and in terms of like your minds, and what are we expecting because of that? Like this feels like it's going to be very hotly contested alongside the game that we have later on, Veteran.
I mean, again, I feel like this is going to be the first time that we're going to see a lot of these players properly tested in any regard, right? Like, we can talk about how good Maxi looked yesterday. We can talk about how good the BTXL bot lane looked yesterday. We can talk about how well Hatrix played around the map compared to what we saw of him in his previous teams. We can talk about this all the time, but they weren't doing it under the kind of pressure that they're going to feel today, especially when it comes down to both of the bot lanes. It will be very interesting to see what happens, because in the first game yesterday, last week, I mean, that Riddle Esports played, Wendelbo and Rayjay, when they were struggling early levels, they did call in Maxi, right? They called in Maxi to help them get their wave shoved out with Lulu with no mana, and with Rayjay really poked out. And they did need Maxi down there, and it turned out really good for them, but that does int his pathing somewhat, right? So we haven't really seen Maxi with kind of 3 lanes that aren't, I wouldn't say begging him for help, but aren't necessarily calling him down and causing him to sacrifice economy for whatever reason, cause him to stop playing his jungle matchup out for whatever reason. And I would hesitate to say that maybe BTXL are going to cause more situations where Maxi may have to move away from being a straight efficient jungler, from being a guy who's trying to be 4 levels up over his opponent and play his jungle matchup out. And we wouldn't have been able to see that last week. Now is the first day that we're going to be able to see if Maxi can be Maxi versus high level competition, or if it could snowball.
Yeah, and I think for me,
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, I think for me, because obviously there's that point about will they shake up Maxi and Riddle, but also for BTXL. So we saw Hatrix consistently leaving his lane to try and enact pressure around the map. Sometimes it was to go for plays around the bot lane, but mostly it was just to facilitate Taxa on this Graves. And I feel like against the side of Riddle, when we see Senkuk's obviously offering more pressure in the lane, he may be punished from leaving more frequently. And also Maxi showed a level of understanding that he doesn't need to consistently pull his laners away. And then my final point to round that out is the bot lane of Godsent that XL were up against consistently were chunked out and on low HP. It made dives a very easy option just to default to. So Hatrix leaves lane to help Taxa. Suddenly they realize enemy Aphelios is 20% HP. It's like, well, the dive basically sets itself up. I don't think that's as likely to happen, although it could still based on how Wendelbo was acting. But there is potential, because I think the big thing with these two teams, as much as they had one-sided games, they weren't flawless.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. You're talking about the Godsent bot lane and how they were almost always at low HP bars and never really got to play the game. The game wasn't like that for the Riddle bot lane, but they were struggling, and not only for the laning phase, but they were also struggling in the mid game. We saw Ray multiple times just getting caught out by a Skarner of all people. Meanwhile, he had the QSS. He still dies. So I feel like Ray's playstyle overall has been a bit struggling, maybe a bit cocky too, because I feel like he came in, was the champion of the last Nordic split, so he came in with a lot of confidence, and when you come in with a lot of confidence, you sometimes start taking these bad trades, and I felt like that really bit him in the bot when they played against Ents. I want to see a Riddle team where they're not underestimating their opponents and they're actually giving the respect. Because if you can give them the respect, you have so good solo laners here, and if you can free up Maxi to just do his thing, he is really the star player of this team. And as we talked about, he's not really been tested either. But if someone is this group is going to test Taxa on the opposite side of BTXL, it's going to be Maxi.
I think if there is an X factor that I would say if we move away from the jungle matchup itself, it's going to be Senkuk's for me, because Orcs does point out Senkuk's did output a lot of pressure, and as Goldberg points out, Maxi enabled Senkuk's to output a lot of pressure. But what does Hatrix do when that happens? Does he default to the Hatrix we were worried we might be seeing in the first place? What happens to Taxa in that regard? Does he still go for these invades? Does he get punished by leans? What happens if Graves is off the table, the safe junglers to invade like that? What happens to both junglers in that scenario? scenario. Maybe I want to see what Maxi does because we saw a lot of AFK stunners last week. Does Maxi just turn into another one of those? I hope not. But that's the kind of thing that we could see today, because I think this mid laner could very effectively punish around the map, as you would expect from a player of as much veterancy as Senkuts does.
I think the vibe that I'm getting today is it's going to be the first real test for everybody on these rosters, given from the games that we saw last week. Is there, obviously Senkuts being the X factor for Riddle, do you think there's an X factor for XL? You know, outside of the bot lane maybe, which we obviously saw had a very, very strong performance last week. Very briefly, Orcs, do you think there's an X factor that we aren't really looking at and haven't maybe touched on with XL?
I don't think specifically. I think it is going to be very focused on the bot lane. I'd say the sort of, if you're talking about the extra factor that we're not really measuring up, then it really is hat tricks, because I think it's very hard to sort of dictate how he's going to play. He said in his interview, it depends on the pick, it depends on the meta. So we could see just a variety of different offerings from this player. I think obviously he is the new player in this XL roster, and very much the role special filled was like a band-aid for the team. And now the question for me is very much, have they fixed the underlying problem, or have they just ripped the band-aid off and now there's an exposed wound that Riddle will look to capitalize on?
Well, we're going to be going to picks and bans very shortly, but before that, we have a quick break, so we'll see you soon.
Squirming around in my sheets, tying myself up in knots and dreams of you. Ooh. And I've been feeling uneasy lately. There's an illness creeping in, raising hairs up on my skin. Oh, when I think of you. Touch when you are around. Yeah, I got a fever. I'm hot to the touch when you're around. I feel the rhythm of my blood pumping through my veins. Feel the flutter of my heart like a bird in a cage. I got a fever. Yeah, I got a fever. You could be thinking of me. Maybe I've been open when your eyes meet mine. They're not just looking through me. Can I just say your smile is contagious, and I've caught it now. Is there an illness creeping in, raising hairs up on your skin when you say my name? Yeah, I got a fever. I'm hot to the touch when you are around.
It is 3 hours later. Veteran has stopped talking, and we're here to jump into the picks and bans here. BTXL versus Riddle. I'm excited about this one. This is, again, like we've kind of talked about, a very hyped matchup. Two potentially top 4 teams going up against each other. Thresh and Aphelios banned already. Let's kick things off. The Thresh ban coming through here. That feels like a specific target, maybe just to make sure that Kalista isn't so powerful, I suppose.
It's just in general, that champion right now is, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to call him unbalanced, but his hit is just so good. You have the opportunity to be the playmaker, especially in this Enchanter support meta too, but you also have the Dark Passage, which really sets up a nice competitive setting where you can actually overextend sometimes, or actually try to do some more greedy plays, because you actually know you will have that Dark Passage. So we've seen a lot of Thresh bans, so it's not necessarily a target ban.
I will go ahead and say I do think the champion is unbalanced. He has way too much easy access to CDR. His cooldowns are too low anyway. He does pretty much everything that you'd possibly want from a support, including countering enchanters, so you just remove enchanters from the game entirely. And normally we see Aphelios Lulu trades and Yuumi Ezreal trades, or or Ezreal Karma trades. And we are seeing 2 of those removed right now. And we have seen first pick Karma already. And that may be what we are looking to see from BTXL here. That's immediately what I think that they are setting up for. The Varus ban would also indicate to me that they're setting up for that, because normally that would be a first pick. Either Syndra or Karma would be the opening rotations here. Otherwise, a jungle matchup, but I think both of those 2 are better options.
Graves are open as of right now. We've talked about both Tax and Maxi has been playing that champion, so if they're showing priority, we could potentially see a first pick Graves here.
Yeah, I think that's potentially the question, because both these junglers will lean towards that champ when the opportunities arise. It is extremely powerful, particularly for Maxi, I think, is the one who gets more benefit from it. So if BTXL want to deny that, it needs to come in here.
Okay, they are taking a lot longer than I figured to do this. Ezreal is the first rotation instead, though. Don't want to give that away. Far too safe in lane with his range, with his poke. Scales way too well with Death Stance right now, especially if you have permission to go into an Iceborne build. And if Graves is open, you know that it's very likely you will end up with that. He's definitely the priority AD carry with Kalista, Aphelios, and Varus spans.
And especially because if you do not pick away the Karma right here as Riddle, you are going to go up against the Ezreal Karma. And when you do that, you don't have the Aphelios you can pair up with the Lulu. Kalista is out of the picture too. The same goes for Varus. So these champions we've seen a lot here already out of the picture now.
This is going to be a Vayne priority for Reje. He absolutely adores the champion. He's very well known for it in EU solo queue. And Vayne is a traditional counter pick to the Ezreal bot lane, and they've already set up for a Vayne carry game with their Lulu. So it's going to be dependent on whether we see a tank top or not coming out here. I note that they did not go for the Trundle to try not to dissuade their opponents from doing so. But what you'd want to see from them is some form of tankiness in the top and bot lane. They're not going to see that though. The Karma has come out. If he wants to do a Vayne now, he's very confident. He is hovering it. We may actually see him lock this in. Used to be that you'd only do this if it was like a Tom bot and a tank top, but you know what? He's saying, I have the Lulu, I have the ability to hyper carry. I am on the record yesterday as saying that Vayne is one of the most powerful solo queue champions right now, and you know what? What's the difference between that and the NLC at the end of the day? So he's locked it in. We're gonna see it. I'm actually really happy to see it. So it's a large amount of comfort for him, and we had question marks about this bot lane. We're seeing them at the most powerful that they can be, even if we think the matchup on the left is an incredibly difficult one in early levels. I think that if they wanted to make a statement, this is the setup in which they would do it.
And I think this sort of brings me back to how XL were playing, and it was a very similar roster, but against Fnatic last year, there were a lot of scenarios where they would crush early, and then they just had this inability to close out the game that would end up biting them in the back, particularly when they had the matchups against Fnatic. If we see a similar situation here, because obviously they'll have early pressure from the Karma Ezreal, the Lee Sin is looking to provide that as well. If they don't have a clean early transition into a strong mid game, this Vayne could end up becoming a massive issue for them later on.
Yeah, I'm already starting to get a bit anxious here, because we talked about the strong side for Riddle here. That was going to be, we talked about Senkox and a good solo laner. Also, Doxy, we didn't really mention him that much, but he was a beast in that Mordekaiser too, and it was through them that Maxa really got to perform freely on the Rift here. Now we're seeing that the bot side of Riddle, who we said was struggling a bit against Ents, is now the carry point for the team.
So my question to you guys is, for XL, they've seen the Vayne. How do they conclude this draft to give them the best possible answers to raise Vayne?
targeted lockdown on the Vayne would be the best thing that you can do right now. I am curious about the Karma there. You do have very early pressure, so maybe they're going to look to do something like they did yesterday and try to simply bounce back very early levels versus the Vayne Lulu and try to lock it. Okay, well, we're definitely going to have to talk about it. But it makes a lot of sense with the Nidalee, right? It's not just the mixed damage aspect of it, but it's also that it is pretty easy crowd control for the Nidalee to be able to bounce off of. And that right there is the global from XL. We are expecting them to just dive the bot lane over and over again from level 1 onwards. Made very, very, very famous in solo queue very recently by Crossman, who famously will rush boots and then leave lane level 1. I would expect this to be an AP Twisted Fate, and then with the Lee Sin, I think it's going to be a very, very potent combination to try to remove this Vayne from the game before she can be a threat, and maybe you'll see that traded towards the Urgot. Interested to see what Senko brings out here.
And I think this goes back to what we were discussing before the game, is that we've seen Hatrix's place down the Galio, where he looked to facilitate the bot lane, he looked to be roaming. The TF is going to fit a similar function, so they are still going with that line of play for Hatrix specifically in this game. And I think it's important how the draft is developed, because they really do need to be looking to shut that Vayne down.
It's a really interesting composition here, because we're looking at what would be a poke composition with the Nidalee Zoe and the Urgot to finish it up. And then you got the Vayne Lulu down in the background. So we thought we had an identity on this Riddle lineup where they were playing through their solo laners once again and their jungler. But right now they mixed that picture up completely. This is a very individual roster setting for them here. And I'm curious to see how that's going to pay out for them.
I mean, I think it makes sense. I think it's something with Riddle, at least specifically, because we did see Maxi, even though he was heavily invading, he had very little interaction with his laners. He just trusts his laners to get priorities to enable him to invade and to punish enemy jungler over and over again. I'm just curious how this is going to work out with the Vayne Lulu, but I think they're expecting that the Zoe is going to be able to keep TF in lane early on and prevent him being able to impact the map. But the itemization is very, very easy for team on the left. If this is the majority of your poke damage, I guess then they're thinking that merely makes Vayne more powerful. But I honestly am in favor of XL here. I think they have the lockdown options on the Vayne with the TF. I think they have the ability to do stuff bot lane early on with the TF and Lee Sin making plays there. And I think itemization favors them as well.
Well, it does look like those, it's a very spicy draft, especially also maybe seeing Hatrix come out of his shell and play more towards that adaptive playstyle that he talked about in his interview, being much less lane focused. Because the story behind Hatrix before coming in is we felt he was a more lane focused mid laner, but it looks like from the picks that he's been displaying, he's adapting that playstyle, he's playing to the meta, and he seems to be fitting into what XL wants out of them, especially playing towards one of their strongest lanes, which is obviously Deadly and Kasing in that bottom side of the map. Now, guys, we're going to hand it over to our casters for our first game of the day. Hit Brain and Trouble Inc. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Xcandrel. Hello and welcome to the caster desk as we're kicking off week 2 of action here at the NLC. Trouble, how are you doing? Nice to have you on the desk with me now.
Ooh, I'm feeling really good. I'm ready for this. We have to, I want to say top 2 for the 2 groups today. So I'm very pumped. One of it is right now underway. And yes, I'm a little bit confused about how things are going to go and how the drafts went. But as we go into the game, I hope we can unravel that.
Yeah, I do want to have a little talk about this top lane, actually, because you were sending me messages during picks and pads like, this is going to be a Volibear top lane. Doxy's
that's a Volibear
in solo queue. And actually, they opt away from it and they pick up this Urgot. How are you feeling about the Urgot and its kind of place within the team here?
I like it because it sort of sets up the top lane. You can repeatedly gank with the Nidalee, assuming you have the priority from the Zoe as well. And you have the mixed damage, which is really hard to itemize against, especially if you're on a side lane. So I do like that. I like the fact that Urgot is going to be playing in your face and on a side lane. So further on, when the Twisted Fate wants to be on a side lane and split push, the Urgot can match him 1-for-1. What I'm a little bit worried about is the ability for Riddle to engage these fights. They have the poke, they have the hyper carry, but how are they going to engage? I'm thinking Urgot flags, but if that's your only opportunity to get onto a fight, it's going to be very situational.
Maybe it's down for a bit of punishing coming in from Riddle. We'll have to see how this is going to obviously play out coming into this game. Like you were saying a minute ago, though, these are the top 2 in Group A, or at least the predicted top 2 in Group A. And it's a good statement for either team to get a win here across the board. They both won their games last week, and a win over the other kind of strongest team in your group really makes a statement for future weeks. So It's very much a game that I've been excited to watch. Like you're saying, also we have later on in the day Monster versus Fnatic, which is another one of our kind of top 2 teams in the other group, kind of going head to head. So we've got some really exciting games today. Last week was a little bit more of a standard kind of one-sided affair. It kind of was almost somewhat obvious what team was going to win, but today it feels a little bit harder to call. I mean, when you looked at the predictions posted on social media by all the casters, we all kind of had a few different ideas. There are some that were a little bit more tied, but for the most part, it was a bit more spicy than last week. I think that's fair to say.
I think some of us are trying to pull ahead or even try to make up for the losses from last week. I'll talk with my example, and you kind of have to choose the dark horse on one or the other games. So mine will come a little further later, as I have voted for Barrage as well, but this is the one I think we need to focus on right now, because like you mentioned, a lot of teams have mentioned these to be the top 2 for the current group, and if BTXL can show that they have versatility, because so far they've showed the same repetitive play over and over again. Play for Taxa, play for that bot lane, allow Taxa to move towards the map just so he can play towards bot lane, and then Hatrix defaults to that as well. But BTXL...
Wait, Hatrix has got the Ghost and the Gold card.
Whoa.
He's going to find that onto Rai, but I don't really think they have the follow-up. I was a little optimistic by Hatrix. I guess they gave them the invade. You should have it back at a reasonable time, so maybe you won't get too hard punished here. Have to be a little careful from a gank from Maxi.
That should be all right, because you have burned the Ghost as well. If you're Hatrix, I do like the aggression coming in the early levels from BTXL, and we've seen it over and over again from them, even in EU Masters. They would pull out these very creative level 1s. And yes, sure, you ban the Ghost, but it's not that huge of a cooldown. And generally with Nidalee, you don't really care about the Ghost, you mostly care about the flash, because if the Q connects, if the spear connects from Nidalee, this is where you gotta flash through to get away from it. What really worries me here is that he's not running any sort of cleanse. So if the Sleepy Trouble Bubble lands by Suncax, that means that both the projectiles coming from the Zoe and the Nidalee are almost guaranteed to hit, and that will be a huge chunk in Hatrix's HP.
Well, he does have that unsealed spellbook, so we'll be able to switch out to a cleanse if he needs to, or if he'd like to. Now, Rai was able to make it down towards this bot side of the map. He was pretty happy to do that.
So, what I'm thinking Taxa might do here, which is not very Taxa-like, is the very typical, when you're playing that AD sort of jungler, such as Jarvan to Lee Sins, you do the buff to Gromp, quickly get that level 3 and possibly translate it into a gank, maybe towards that top lane. Now, I don't necessarily think that a Wukong Lee Sin can dive the Ergot that easily, but we could see him putting some pressure up the top side.
But we do want to keep our eyes on Taxa as this game does progress. One of the things that we were hitting on a little bit earlier is how BTXL like to play bot side. They like to play around Deadly. Since he joined the team like the style that BTXL were always trying to achieve over in the UKLC last year really kind of came together with Deadly. As they always like to play bot side, and when they had Shannon on the team, like Shannon was quite happy kind of playing neutral in lane. Deadly is a player who loves to be played around.
I would have to say Kaseng has something to do with this as well, because Kaseng really likes his lane dominance. He likes pulling the people down there, asserting that dominance early on, and then snowball it from there. We've said before, the faster you get Deadly into that lane game where you know he can perform.
Oh,
Taxa?
He's able to dodge away on that spear. Hatrix was making his way down as well, though, so it was pretty hard for them to go for that. The push was there from Hatrix, and does mean that Senkux wasn't able to make his way to help for the crab. And this is actually one of the things that Veteran was hitting on during Champ Select towards the end of it, was this Zoe was kind of picked up to kind of stop Hatrix from being able to leave, and this might just be that opening. Hatrix does get the flash and the gold card to get away. But like I said, Senkux, without help, hasn't really been able to kind of keep Hatrix in position and in control for the moment anyway.
I would honestly like to know what happened there in the lane. The fact that Hatrix was able to push that wave faster than Senkax, I would like to see what happened there with the wave manipulation and the wave management from both the mid laners. But you also see how easy it is to pinpoint that Twisted Fate down. He he lost his flash as well right now, which means he will be more immobile than before. And the Ghost doesn't necessarily help you that much versus a Zoe that can pop the Sleep Trouble Bubble on you and then punch a lot of damage. So I would like to see Maxi putting a return gunk onto Sankax. Sankax is so good at taking the lead and translating it into further onto the map, rather than the other way around with BTXL, where it is everyone for Taxa and Taxa for everyone. So you gotta give love to your jungler for your jungler to return the love, mainly towards that bot side. But I would like to see Sankax pulling the same thing here.
Alrighty, well, the Ocean Drake is the first Drake up. He'll be spawning up fairly soon. If you have a little look at the wards right now for the side of BTXL, this bot side is blue. There are so many wards. Thank you, Observer. Pretty hard to miss them all. Swindleboat will just move through complete vision. They know where Maxi is as well. You can tell that XL are looking to play towards this bot side, and they're looking to maybe prioritize this Drake nice and early for themselves.
And also, you gotta keep tabs on Maxi. We've been talking about how dominant he is when he does get the vision and the intel. At this point, I think BTXL are playing a very clever game. They knew that Maxi was gonna be passing towards that bot side of the map. They know exactly where he is. And now with the early reset, they could also seem to sneak a dragon coming in here. You see that Ray is going back to base as well. And then the Lee Sin is all alone down there. So if you know where Maxi is at all times, then you're safe. It's Maxi making the difference here. I wrote in my notes that it's gonna be a better jungler wins, and it feels like both teams are willing to feed that power into their junglers.
Unless Ascendo may actually be on a little bit of a mission just to see if he can find Maxi. Doesn't actually go for him or find him, and should complete this base to get out, although Spear will connect onto Sendo. Sendo turns it onto Maxi a little bit here, and he's going to jump in for that execute. That's the Fear Beyond Death, and Sendo just gets picked off. First blood to Doxy.
You were just about saying Sendo is trying to find Maxi, but it kind of got flipped because Maxi found Sendo. He burns his flash as well. This is great stuff. You're trying to get your side laner ahead. Remember, we said that this might be the Urgot that the Twisted Fate might be playing against. If your Urgot is that strong, then no one will be able to lane against him later on. And that might be the win condition for Riddle right there, that no one can match this strong Urgot in the top side. Meanwhile, though, while this goes going on, of course, bot lane priority to BTXL. Taxa sneaks in that dragon as well.
We are seeing Deadly's taken the Sheen as his first base as well, so he was obviously expecting maybe some kind of a scrap down towards that dragon. As now Taxa, level 6, has the insect available. Wenderboy only level 4.
He's been spotted.
He has been spotted out on that pink wall, so they know this is happening. They got the wave crashing in. That's going to be the Destiny thrown down by Hatrick's gold card in. Wenderboy flashes away. They actually get the condemn off onto Kasing, and now 4 versus 4 with Maxi joining into the fight as well. Deadly is going to try and get some damage out. Tax is able to secure himself 1 kill there. Stenkux is making his way forward. Spear goes a little bit wide, and Stenkux coming in from downtown doesn't decide to commit. XL, that was a little risky, but they were able to pull it off. They got the kill, and they are just going to back away.
Give me a more textbook BTXL play. You free Taxa, he takes the dragon, and he's like, hey, you know what? We have priority top, we have priority mid, we've got the Twisted Fate with the Global ult. Let's pull the lights and go everyone down that bot side. And that's exactly what happened. Even though I think Wendelbolt played this amazingly, BTXL here, of course, had the 5v3 numbers onto Riddle. That Zoe was way too late to the party, and they did manage to get away with murder right there and cash in on their lead.
Hatrix finished up those boots. Over in the UK LC yesterday, we actually saw a Twisted Fate. Although the difference was they actually rushed the Swiftness boots, which really showed me they wanted to be roaming. But early pick up on the Merc Treads obviously will help a little bit with some extra tenacity to deal with that bubble. And just a
the
flat
bubble,
mana CC.
the spears, all the poke coming in from the Zoe. I mean, I've been adding her to my legal list for the past few months now. The poke is insanely high for how little or no AP she has on her. I'm pretty sure that if she lands a trouble bubble right now to someone and a full Q, she will most likely take 60+% of your HP, but I think I might have gotten caught.
Yeah, well, he actually gets himself the tether off, gets slowed, dodges out on the spear. That's the Fear Beyond Death, clipping Kasing in the bum, but not going to be able to kill him. And this does look like Riddle, with the swap over towards this top side, are going to win out on the contest for the Rift Herald. Although Deadly and Taxter are seeing if they can make something happen. Remember that Fear Beyond Death is down, and Sendo's making his way forward. He's got that Cyclone. The bubble's going to go out by Senkox. He's not going to find his opening. Stoxy's going to get chunked from Deadly. Paddlestar will connect, and it's 2k on to the Rift Herald. Sendo dodging away. Hatchet has that gold card stacked up and ready to go. Is going to land it, and that will be the end of the Herald. Riddle able to pick it up and step away. XL did scrap them there, though. They wanted to try and contest it.
That was so crucial from Suncox and the Sleepy Trouble Bubble. It landed onto Sendo right as he was pressing R. So he starts cycling around himself, but he's not able to dash into the middle of Riddle to try and cause some havoc on the backline. So great stuff coming in from the mid laner of Riddle. They do get the Rift Herald as well. And I'm looking to see where they're going to choose to cash in that gold from the Shelly. This is a poke composition. So yes, there is the argument of, shall we use the Rift Herald to take a tower completely and open a lane? Or shall we use it to cash in the gold? Knowing that this is a snowbally poke comp, I would go for the let's just cash in the money straight away and try to snowball and make a lead.
So that might be what they're looking to do here, as Maxi is waiting around in that top side. Deadly kind of doing what Deadly does best at this point. When games start to fall a little bit behind for him previously, he would just go off to a side lane and just power farm and put himself away from the action. So they may just make a trade on towers here, or at least some plates, because I don't think BTXL are going to be able to take a tower without the help of the Rift Herald. Riddle, though, will win this race for first Tower of Blood. There is a Mountain Drake spawning up in 44 seconds as well, so they could be able to get themselves set up for that. This will be the turret crumbling to the side of Riddle on the top side, and Deadly, he's not even been able to get himself one plate yet.
Yeah, and Doxy is being really denied farm and experience right there. But you have to see the fact that there's 4 members of PTXL up top. So it wasn't just Doxy that was being stuffed.
They got the flick, they got the kick. Doxy's going to get exhausted by Deadly. Sendo channels the Cyclone, but doesn't hit anybody. And Doxy just able to survive through that. He has that Fear Beyond Death, and Sendo's going to tank the tower. The Destiny's going to get used. He's thrown out the ultimate as he gets knocked up, but Sendo secures the kill. XL find one in response. Meanwhile, in the bot lane, they've been able to chunk out this tower because Thing's doing his best to defend. Right takes a couple too many tower shots, however.
Doxy played this so well. He stayed alive for so long. He took Summoners, the exhaust from Deadly. He took the ultimate from Hatrix's Twisted Fate, the ultimate from Sendo as well. Whilst on the other hand, Raya was cashing in on a full plate tower and was able to chip away on so much damage onto that bot lane tier 2, as well as the dragon onto that bot side. Now, meanwhile, this all was going on, Sendo was not allowed to farm because remember, it was 4 members of BTXL bundled up onto the top side to the point where we're like, okay, Doxy is being subbed. Yeah, but so is Sendo. So at the end of the day, I feel like Doxy comes out ahead on this one.
So let's have a little talk about the Twisted Fate and in general the global ultimate, because one of the things you were talking to me while we were doing our prep for today was you were talking a little bit about the impact of global ultimates. Let's have a little look at the replay and then we'll get onto that. But you can see it obviously kind of came off the bat that Hatrix was able to make his way up and get the gold card off.
Yeah, and this is the thing about global ultimate. Sometimes if you're not tracking it correctly, and right there, even if Doxy was tracking it correctly, there was nothing really you could do to stop Hatrix from getting up there and assisting his team to getting the kill. But the thing is, if you are on the weaker teams, having the global ultimate might take the stronger teams of the surprise, and you could be cashing in on these very juicy kills. Things as the Abyssal Voyage from the Tam Kent, things as the Shen ultimate, the ultimate from the Twisted Fate right here can catch people off guard, as well other utilities as a Twisted Fate right here will be able to spot Vayne throughout the entire team fight, which means that when she ulties, the entire BTXL team will still have access to her whereabouts. I might have lost. Hip Rain?
I'm here, don't worry.
Okay, we got him.
I'm here, don't worry. I'm just watching the League of Legends. Wonderboat is able to disengage a little bit. Takes a fair amount of poke from Casting and Tax there. They are moving multiple members down towards the spot slide again. They are investing into Deadly. Wonderboy will spot the members out with the Glitter Lance, but the gold card started up. Spear gonna take onto Taxa, and Maxi may just switch in to try and get something here. The teleport's gonna go down though. And that's Deadly also taking a spear. Maxi just landing so much damage.
I don't understand the decision making in BTXL right now. They're pulling in the TPs while top and mid are able to free farm. There's absolutely zero objective other than the tier 1 bot lane tower for them to take. And that was a very crucial spear for Maxi to land right there and completely dissuade that dive that they tried to do bot lane. While all of this is going on, the solo laners from Riddle are just consistently farming. So even though you see BTXL pulling all these proactive plays onto the map, they're only able to pull ahead 500 gold, and that's nothing at this point.
Well, 15 minutes on the clock. The gold is pretty close between these two teams. XL do have a slight advantage, even with the fact that they lost first turret blood. Mostly off the fact that they've got CS leads in the mid and the bot lane. And obviously those extra kills. We can actually have a little look at the gold graph as well.
Ooh, you see how it's been going a lot back and forth right here. The difference between those teams, they're just taking the driver's seat one after the other. And that has to do with the fact that one team pulls the proactive play and then the other team is able to hit back with a kill of their own. Doxy wants to fight the situation right there, but he's been found in one himself and he's gonna back out. Now, of course, Shirley has spawned as well, so they're trying to push the waves. Bot is pushing for BTXL, so they do have the advantage right there. And of course, they don't want, Riddle doesn't want to give access to that mid lane tier 1 tower that's going to break open the game.
Well, Atrax actually did just get himself a little card off onto Wendell, but it wasn't the gold card, and these teams are quite grouped up. Neither team really wanting to hard commit to the other in case it goes awry. It looks like they are just going to step back for a little bit. That dragon spawning up fairly soon. It's one dragon apiece. Deadly's going to throw down the true shot just to chip down the members more than the wave. Don't know if that was a misclick or if it was a calculated decision, but the bubble will land onto him, and Stenkut's not going to be able to get too much more here. The turret will survive from XL.
And you can see how hard it is for the BTXL team to clear underneath the tower. Yes, you do have the cards from the Twisted Fate and consistent Qs from the Ezreal, but you don't have hard wave clear that the Zoe provides you with. At this point though, because they committed so hard into pushing that mid lane tower that they couldn't get down in time, that means that with all the resets happening and Doxy being down bot lane pushing the wave, BTXL get a pretty free secondary herald.
Now, where do you think they're going to use it? One of the things we talked about a little bit yesterday on the UKLC show was using it mid lane to kind of open up the map for yourself. And with the tier 1 bot side was already being a little bit low, flopping it down in the mid lane seems like a pretty smart decision for XL. It means they can start to move that vision line up again. Because we do take a little look at the vision. It's all red on the bot side currently for the side of Riddle. And XL now having to slowly make their way back into their own jungle to get control of their areas. Taxa, just take a spear from Maxi. This is a long and hard fight to fight for this vision.
You see how they're trying to surround Raya? They're like, it's fine, our Vayne is split pushing on the side, so we need to protect. Now, of course, the Rift Herald is in the hands of Tax, and he's gonna pop it right now. And Senkax is pretty low on mana right here.
Yeah, they are going to get the charge out. I don't think that's going to be enough to actually kill the tower, however. We'll survive with a little bit of health left.
That was a little bit questionable right there. Deadly didn't have any mana at all. They had just pushed in the wave, but you know that Senkax is there to clear it up really quickly. And I think they have just conceded their mid lane tier 1 tower. So they needed for it to be a different outcome, and a different one came up. It is this time Riddle that opened up the map, and it's gonna be getting even harder for immobile champions such as the Twisted Fate to try and push through that mid lane to push the wave further out, because all of these projectiles and all of this poke is gonna be flying in from the Nidalee and the Zoe, and if one of them catches you, more likely that more of them are gonna follow through.
The gold lead still neck and neck as we're approaching that 20-minute mark. Mountain Drake and Ocean Drake have been picked up for Riddle. We are looking at an Ocean Soul, which would be really nice for whoever can get it, really. Ocean Soul is arguably one of the stronger souls you can pick up at the moment. And if you're someone like Doxy on this Urgot, obviously having an Ocean Soul means you're just going to be so hard to kill, standing in the middle of the enemy team with those shotgun knees going off.
See, my eyes fall straight onto BTXL when I see an Ocean Soul because of the game style of the composition that Riddle have chosen to draft for themselves. They have a poke composition. That means that, yes, if they do poke BTXL and BTXL has the Ocean Soul, that means that a lot of this damage is going to be mitigated. They're going to heal back up. They're going to be able to stand their ground and fight without moving away from their objectives or towers, and even be able to re-engage onto these fights that they've been poked out from. Now, of course, this is a longer thing to look into the future because we still have, well, BTXL still has 3 more dragons to go if they do want to reach the soul. But at this point...
Oh, they actually land a bubble there. Taxa's going to have to body block this as the spear does connect. Maxi not willing to jump onto Deadly there. Could have been a little bit too hairy for him, but Taxa forces the flash from Senkux. That's a real flash. That wasn't a spell thief flash.
Okay, I think Senkax overstepped his welcome a little bit, and then his team might have been getting caught.
Good gold card by Hatrix. The True Shot barrage will collect as Wendelbow flashes away. Hatrix looks to try and get a little bit more damage on. That's going to be the ultimate use. Hatrix goes gold, and Taxa looking to slide in and save the day. Gold card connects. That is going to be all she wrote, although Doxy's teleported in, landed that Fear Beyond Death, and he's going to get the execute off onto Hatrix. Meanwhile, Sendo now running amok in the middle of the team. The fight is breaking out on all fronts. Sendo goes down. Doxy will be next to fall, but XL lose 2, while Riddle lose 1.
What in the world is going on? There's literally 3 different fights happening in the top quadrant of Tax's jungle. It is, of course, Riddle coming out on top of that because they do manage to kill both Hatrix and Sendu. But what do they get from that? Relatively nothing so far, because I don't believe that their Baron power is there if Doxy goes down. Now, of course, I want to mention that the way their team comp works is you have to first hold people down, and then you possibly have Doxy either flanking with that Urgot or running into them with potentially a Righteous Glory, which I don't think is coming yet because I'm seeing a little cheeky death stance being built by Doxy. But let's have a look at it again. So it is going to be Hatrix going in to try and catch Wendelbow, but this Yordle has too many shields, too much utility to stay alive, and then Dox is like, it's all right, guys, I got this. But while all of this is happening, Sendu has the exact same idea. The exact same idea as Doxy did, and then both top laners pay for their sins.
Although Doxy was able to get a little bit more out of the deal there. He did pick himself a kill up onto Hatrix.
Fine.
With this dragon spawning up, it looks like XL want to try and contest it, try and get some control over the area. That's going to be the ultimate thrown down by Hatrix. Gold card lands onto Doxy. They put a lot of healing, a lot of shielding in, but Taxa slides in and saves the day. Does have to blink his way back out there as the bubble does land by the Zoe, but not going to look to commit onto Hatrix. And now, with that top lane down, it looks like XL should just be able to pick themselves up this dragon relatively easy.
And the Ocean Soul starts coming real right now because they do have 2 of them, only 2 more to go, same as Riddle. So it is a 50-50 on these dragons. If you haven't fallen behind versus a comp that wants to poke you to death, then you're doing a great job. And BTXL are doing exactly that. They're holding on. They're ahead in CS. You see that Hatrix is ahead versus Senkax. You see that Sendu has kept even versus Doxy. Sure, the Lee Sin is gonna fall behind because of the nature of the 2 champions, and even though Lee Sin is not necessarily a champion that I picture Taxa playing because of the early game aggression that he provides into the game, and we haven't really seen much of that. He has managed to pull out ahead in kills, and then Maxi, instead of being the major damage dealer, will have to be a utility tool for Raya in the late game, popping on these heals and attack speed buffs onto his AD carry.
Well, interestingly enough, actually, Lee Sin for Taxa was his most played champion last year on the UKLC. He's a champion who, for me, I kind of think of when I think of the champ. He's one of our players has been playing a fair amount of this, and it
I'm
does
thinking more of
suit him,
like
his style.
Trundle, Needly Graves, maybe. You know, something more scaly. Obviously, playstyle wise, that's what I'm talking.
Yeah, I mean his style is a lot. He does play a lot of the Trundle, to be fair. I don't know if I've ever seen him on Nidalee. Now I think about it, I could be incredibly wrong. I've watched so many games of Taxes that I'd assume I probably have by now. But off the top of my head, it's not a champion I think of when I think of him. Lee Sin is.
All right, let's see what Taxa can do in the next few fights, because I feel like he's going to have to be the engager right here. He's going to have to be the one that dives in to kick someone back. And Wendelbolt might have found himself way too far forward here. They're still not gonna pull the trigger. You see that Doxy has a disadvantage on the TP because Sendo is pushing that side lane, which means Doxy is gonna lose out on all that CS. And right now, Sendo is playing the smart game. He's going to group.
Oh, no, because Sting has to flash away. Maxine may just look to chase here. Taxi is able to ward hop over the wall to get himself to safety as the Honey Fruits are up on the map. Deadly's pushing up in the mid lane, and now Hatrix looking for that Destiny is going to be able to get out scot-free.
Wait. Raya just flashed for this.
Yep. He didn't condemn. I'm fairly certain he didn't condemn there. Our observer put the mouse over it.
He had just teleported. The second he flashed, he had just teleported away.
Oh, the condemn. No, sorry. The condemn did go off, but it hit him in like that, like kind of invulnerable area, so it went off, and it would have condemned him on the other side of his destiny. Now, anyway, teamfight looks to be breaking out here because Sting continues to be the one taking the brunt of the poke. Hatrix looking to put some distance between him and the rest of the team. Spear's going to go wide by Maxi. That's going to be the ultimate coming down by Doxy. Does get himself a slow onto Sendo. Taxa kicks one away. That's the gold card going onto Wendelbow. Then cuts onto that flank.
Deadly.
Deadly looks to try and mop this fight up, though. That's going to be the ultimate thrown down by Sendo as he flashes to get the next one because Sting secures the kill onto Doxy. Deadly throws out the ultimate. Doesn't hit onto anyone. But overall, XL are able to peel away and find themselves a kill.
Riddle are diving into their deaths. Your ADC, your 2-item power spike Vayne is sitting on the sideline pushing a wave, and you're chasing for kills when you don't even have hard engage. So BTXL are gonna choose to go for the Baron here. There's still a ton of poke on the side of Riddle, and let's see if they can do it.
This is literally what you love if you're playing a Nidalee and a Zoe. People grouped up in a pit where you can just throw skill shots in and poke them down further and further. And it was enough to just force XL off that Baron. You got 1 minute until the Ocean Soul spawns up, so it looks like the attention may just be put towards that.
I think they tried to see if possible they can get another one. So here you see 4 members of Riddle. They're really trying to follow onto Doxy, moving in first. But there are no tools to catch any member from BTXL. And Deadly got a really lovely flank from the side as well, and he was able to free hit the entire time this fight was going on. So all in all, I think that was pretty much a present given over to BTXL. And even though, yes, they did start a Baron versus a poke composition, they were wondering if they can get more out of that and then turning into a Baron.
Oh, Deadly just dodging away on everything there. Even Arcane shifted aggressively. True Shot Barrage lands onto 3. Just to go to poke a bit of the Riddle down more and more. Oh, it's actually Deadly jumping onto Rai. Rai's taking a serious amount of damage from Deadly here. He's going to get healed back up, though, from the Nidalee.
That is the QSS gone, though, for the Vayne, which means that if Hatrix can get a nice gold card onto him, then everyone can pile back up. Your eyes on Taxa. He has the flash. He might be the initiator here.
Well, they're going to kill themselves. The Dragon Maxi went for it. 3-man Cyclone from Sendo. Deadly still inside the pit, poking out the damage. The health bars are very, very low on both sides here as Kasting's looking to run away. Senkux will take a gold card from Hatrix, and Hatrix looks to mop him up. The flash comes down. The True Shot Barrage clips on the 4. And XL gets out. They lose their top laner. They're unable to kill anybody on the side of Riddle. They put themselves 1 away from that Ocean Soul, though.
That is honestly fine if you're BTXL. You see your Ezreal is starting to come online. That's stance isn't even purchased yet, baby. The second this puppy is in his inventory, he's gonna become a raid boss. And at this point, all eyes are on Deadly and Taxa for me. Which kick is Taxa gonna choose to take? How is Deadly gonna play the team fight? So far, I'm seeing a great Ezreal gameplay coming in from the BTXL AD carry right there. And Hatrix had a great position. You know, he was playing a little bit in, a little bit out. He was keeping the Zoe away, almost gets the kill onto Sankax here as well. And everyone gets out scar-free. Well, except Sandu. But he will take it because they are one dragon away from Ocean Soul. Ocean Soul means instant victory against the composition.
Doxy's going to take the gold card. Taxa lands the kick. Maybe looking for a little bit more. The Wild Growth's being thrown down. The True Shot Barrage lands onto 3 members. Taxa is going to get shut down. In goes Maxi, trying to look to turn this around for the side of Riddle, but the health bars are already too low. And Deadly playing with supreme confidence in the face of Riddle. Landing the Qs, landing the poke. Is going to have to back away for the moment, but Rai actually jumps in, gets a massive amount of damage off. Ascendo is on the run. Rai is chasing him down, though. He's going to use the Cyclone. Doxy's onto the flank. He's looking for Kasing. The Cyclone will knock him up, though. They flip him back in. Sendo gets picked off, and he is taken down as Deadly takes the paddle star to the face. His health bar is so low, and Doxy is looking to hunt him down. Deadly is able to get out, though, and it looks like Riddle, they're still done. They're still thirsty for blood at the moment, as Hatrix is trying to find something for his team. Can he get Deadly out? Deadly's been collapsed on too many fronts. He's looking for Maxi, able to get his shift off, but he will finally fall. BTXL losing all of their members, bar one. A fantastic showing for Riddle.
They managed to punish the over-aggression from Taxa. Remember, we said all eyes onto that Lee Sin. Where is he gonna just take that engage? Hatrix and Taxa run in to try and get an engage onto Riddle, and he backfires. Taxa ends up going down, and Riddle dispats of him and almost his entire team. Now it's in his hands to redo all the damage that he did.
This is what Taxa does so well, stealing his objectives. He takes himself the kick, takes the paddle star. Maxi just mops him up, finds himself the easy kill. And this will be Baron over the side of Riddle. XL bit off a little bit more than they can chew. Trying to find a pick onto Doxy. We'll have a little look at that again.
Wow, and here you see the over-aggression from Taxa again. He gets condemned onto the wall. Beautifully played by Raya right there. And then he insta-cleanses the gold card from Hatrix to try and keep on chasing. And once that Vayne starts chasing you, she never stops. Doxy takes a ticket out, and he's like, oh baby, I'm back in. They wanted more, they got more. They kept chasing those BTXL members. They were spread all over the map. And even though at this point I started scratching my head because they had killed both the Engager, which is centered on that Wukong, and the Smite holder, which is Taxa. And I'm like, what are you doing right here? Clearly those BTXL members are gonna have to go back to base to refresh their HP bars and then try to contest Baron. But at the end of the day, it was pretty easy for Riddle to pick these ones up as well as the Baron later on.
All right, well, now it's over the side of Riddle. They're looking to push up. The Destiny's been used, and Deadly has to jump away. Senkux looks for a bubble, doesn't find his mark onto anybody. He just went straight top lane. XL are actually just looking to try and out-split push Baron here with one member. And this may just be the end of their inhibitor mid lane. This may be the end of their base. If Riddle want to commit, they still got Baron, they still got the wave to work with. XL needs to cancel. They're going for the teleports. They're now going to look for that defense. Everybody's joined up. Deadly, gets a lot of damage off onto Wendelbow. As Rai looks to run him through, a good exhaust comes down. They actually use that Fear Beyond Death onto Deadly to keep him alive. A 3-man Cyclone by Sendo, and looks for a second. Gets the knockup. Deadly, very low HP though. Gold card does land onto the Zoe. Doxy's still so healthy though. And XL struggling to step up, to save their base, to save their waves. This could just be Riddle closing this game out here. Turret number 1's going to go down. The True Shot Barrage clips onto a lot of members. Sendo looking to chase. Hatrix has the ghost, gets the gold cup, and it's instantly QSS out. Rai's doing so much damage. He has to get kicked away by Taxa. They're going to exit the base, and XL, what were they doing committing so many people topside?
They were trying to outsplit. First, they were trying to put Riddle in a situation where they have to choose to battle them. But you cannot really battle the split push that the Baron up wave will give you. They went straight into that mid lane. And guess what? They will also deny the Ocean Soul away. So that gives them one more ticket to try and push through that mid lane one more time. And you could see that they didn't necessarily want to kill BTXL, but they wanted to fend them off that mid lane wave, that mid lane Baron up wave that managed to get them another, the first Nexus Tower, as I'll say. There's only one standing in the way of Riddle and victory here.
Ryze now got the Death Dance as well as that QS Death, so pretty strong at this point. We do look at Deadly. He's just finished up his Death Dance. But you can see the gold graph, actually. It's very interesting because it's been pretty back and forth. There were moments where it peaked in XL's favor, but now it is peaked inside of Riddle.
I think
Got himself a
it's
2k gold lead.
The compositions aren't really clear right now. I think it keeps on going back and forth depending on who hits what. Is Taxa gonna hit a great kick? Is Hatrick's gonna get a gold card? Is the Sleepy Trouble Bubble gonna hit somebody that Riddle can follow up on? Is Doxy gonna get the flank right there? All the engage and all the tools are very situational for both of these teams. This is why you see some fights going one way and some going the other.
Hatrick's able to hold this mid lane for himself. 35 minutes on the clock, and even though Riddle have got this base opened up, still feels like XL have a little bit of fight left in them. The gold isn't that far ahead, but they can just comfortably close this out. So you can see Riddle playing quite smart now. They're not overcommitting. They're not playing too greedy and just looking to end the game here and now. They understand that XL could find that opening, could find that pick for themselves onto the likes of Rye or Doxy, and that could cost them the game. But the scaling is very much alive here. When you've got a late game Vayne, you've got a late game Lulu, enabling that Vayne to pop off.
Uh-oh, I think they want to get Doxy out of the way and then turn that possibly into a Baron. They're looking for picks because this is what they need to do at this point. There's way too much poke coming in from the Riddle composition, and they actually need to engage before they get poked out of a fight. Riddle doesn't care though, because they still have the super minion in the mid lane. It's like BTXL is trying to force them to reply to their split push, but Riddle doesn't care because BTXL are the ones playing on the back foot, and once the super minions are in BTXL's base, it is them who have to reply to that.
Destiny was actually used there by Hatrix. He's gone back towards the river. I think he was just kind of overstaying in the lane to shove and then went for a safe path out there. The spear goes a little bit wide from Maxi. I actually respect that Destiny. Kind of gave him the knowledge on how long he could stay and when he could leave, and he kind of pushed it to the absolute maximum for himself. Drowsy will land there, but there's no way that Stencox is going to be able to actually follow up with any damage onto Deadly.
We are about to see possibly one of the last fights of the game. It might not even go to actual soul for these two teams to resolve the differences between them. Again, it is very situational, but at this point, you have to weigh your damage as well. Raya, on that Vayne, he's got the triple spike right there with the Death Stance and the Blade and the Rage Blade. Triple Blade for him and the QSS. I think he's gonna be untouchable unless you can somehow get to be able to reach Wendelbo and kill him first, where at that point you're gonna have way too many people in your face to kill the Lulu off. And I'm not sure who would do that, because I don't necessarily think anyone on BTXL has the damage for the 100% to 0. I think they're gonna try to trade Dragon for Inhibitor Tower?
This is a very, very fast Baron for the side of Riddle. They are going to land the True Shot Barrage. It doesn't actually cancel the base. As Taxa is waiting about. He takes himself the bubble into the face. He's already low, shielded up and unable to survive. They're teleported in. XL are actually looking for the back door here. Hatrix trying to take down the turret. The first one will fall. Stencox looks to join in, dodging away on the damage for the moment as he chunks out Stencox. Stencox has to go golden, but Sendo's so low. Doxy was able to turn the fight around, save the day for him, and finds the double kill. Deadly shifts into the face of Maxi and Wendelbo. Kasing's taking a lot of damage. He has got that spear on. Maxi launches in with the wild growth on top of him, and Deadly has to put this damage out, but he's unable to do so as he will get taken down. Maxi finds a double kill. This should be game for Riddle. They're teleporting in. They're going to close the game.
We talked about how this game was going to indicate the clear #1 in the group. And even though Riddle do win this game, I still have a question on Heat Train, even though I'm so excited that, sure, they did come in as the underdogs in this particular game versus BTXL, a BTXL that looked very, very, very dominant. But the decision-making left me scratching my head the entire time. It felt like they were trying to play Riddle on their decisions. They were trying to trick them into taking the wrong decision, and Riddle were rock solid on what they wanted to do. They had their eyes onto that Nexus. They knew exactly how they wanted to play out the game. And even though I did like the cheeky kind of try for the back at the end, I don't think there was anyone with any interrupt to stop the backs and the teleports coming in from the side of Riddle. So all in all, I do feel like it was, I do feel like it was BTXL tumbling under pressure.
They did crumble a little bit there at the end because it looked like they had a game plan. They're like, right, we can actually win here. But with Taxley just getting picked off by that bubble, as soon as he jumped into the pit, he just got blown apart. The shielding from the Karma just wasn't enough. And for that, it was all Riddle needed. So big props to Sencrux on his Zoe. He played superb there. And I feel like he was kind of a major factor in what kept them in that game relevant, because like we saw when the gold graph got brought up, XL were ahead at one point. It was these constant bubbles and this annoying poke from over the wall that Zoe was able to layer onto the members of XL, and it just shut them out of that game. Now, guys, we are going to cut to a quick break, but when we're back with the analyst desk. We'll be breaking down that game, so don't go anywhere. We'll see you after the break.
What's that strange face staring at me in the mirror?
change of season, coming over, coming over. It goes on and on and on, and it never seems to stop. It goes on and on and on. What do I need? What do I need? I need to make it happen. To make it happen. Oh man, it ain't that easy, easy. What do I need? I need to make it happen. To make it happen. Oh man, it
Welcome back to the NLC. What a game one that was. Riddle arguably upsetting the apple cart by taking down XL. I know you went for it to Goldborg, but most people, I think, assumed XL the favorites coming in here, but Riddle's certainly showing why they are definitely top four material for the NLC. Where do we even start, veteran? I'm going to bring you in first here. Can we start chronologically in this game? Where did things start to unravel for XL?
Honestly, things unraveled pretty early on for XL, like the burning ghost on the opening level 1 into basically no mid-jungle interaction early game whatsoever, means that they didn't visit bot lane until well after Twisted Fate had gotten 6. Neither jungler on either side, even though Maxi did end up making a statement this game, neither jungler was actually in mid lane at 5:30 for the level 6 wave. No one was really intending to do anything massive early game with those 6 spikes, and for TF that was a massive deal. They wanted to rotate this Twisted Fate down, they wanted to set this Vayne behind, but we never saw Taxa move into mid lane to set that up. We saw Hatrix have to relinquish himself, much like we used to see Special do so, but the stuff that we saw yesterday from Galio, last week I mean from Galio, we didn't necessarily get to see today from Hatrix, and it does come down to the lack of interaction between jungle and mid for them. Max ended up making a statement for the rest of the game, and Ray J ended up being really impactful on the Vayne in later stages, but it was really on XL to accelerate before they could get to that point, and they just didn't. It looked at points like they weren't even trying to.
I also feel like that Riddle in general was better at playing the map. A lot of the times we're going to see a grouped XL roster, and sometimes it was just too overgrouped. Honestly, they spent so many resources trying to gank the bot side, trying to get even you saw in the replay, we saw that they tried to get onto Doxy. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, you have Maxi and you have Vendelbo and Ray just chilling down with a Herald, just giving them turrets for free. And that was just the narrative of this game again and again and again. Every time that BTXL overgroups, overforces, another member of the Riddle lineup is just chilling at the other side of the map and saying, it's fine, we're scaling, just let them do that overforce, just play that kitingly. We did see that XL sometimes, I mean, not XL, but Riddle sometimes felt too confident and are still making mistakes, but in general, they played this game much better than they did against ENCE.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of Senkux and Riddle, we actually have Senkux standing by, ready to chat to. So I'm going to bring Senkux in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello. Hello.
Hi, mate. Hi.
Hello.
First of all, congratulations. That was obviously an excellent win for you guys. Obviously, the question on everybody's minds was the Ray Vayne. Veteran kind of predicted it in the draft. Was that a planned pick, or was that adapted based on what you saw in the draft phase?
I mean, I'll be kind of spoiling, no, in that case, but it was definitely something we were looking out for. But I mean, Kai is kind of known for being a Vayne player. They should have known that as well, and we got Maxi on Nidalee too, so it was a very comfortable draft for us in general.
Yeah, definitely looked that way as well. And obviously, one of the core things that you had to do this game was making sure you were keeping tabs on Hatrix and trying to keep him in lane as much as you can. How do you feel that went, matchup went? Do you feel like you played your role especially well there, sort of keeping Hatrix under lock?
I didn't play my role completely optimally this game, but it's more about being a second support when we have Vayne and Lulu, so it's just about buffing up our hyper carry and being a bit annoying for them. I think I did that fine later on, but it's still some things we could have done a lot better. Obviously, the game wasn't clean. It was very messy at times and very back and forth, but a win is a win, and it's still early in the season.
Win is a win, mate. I completely agree with you. A lot of talk has been about Maxi as well. He's kind of been touted as a new, really, really strong up-and-coming jungler. This is kind of like his split to show what he can do. Potentially, we see him go on with you guys to do stuff in the European Masters as well. Do you think Maxi's the best jungler in the NLC?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think he's the best jungler in Neo Masters probably as well. In the national leagues, I guess you say.
There we go.
I've been playing with Maxi for a long time as well, so we have some early synergy, and it kind of helps when we started the team too.
Yeah, your 2v2 seems pretty strong, I won't lie. Maxi just seems to outpace most junglers.
Yeah, but we didn't really have to play it this game, so.
No, that's true. And for you, obviously, you came over from Gambit, right? Back into sort of the Western ERL scenes. What has it been like for you making that transition back into sort of the EU Masters territory and having that pathway ahead of you?
I mean, it's lovely. It's nice that there's finally like a league for Nordic people to play that I was kind of looking for before as well, but the Nordic league was very bad and very poor managed. I feel like it was not a lot of interest for a lot of players. So I ended up going to Gambit for a split, but this is where I want to be. I want to still like try and compete in Europe and build my way back up to the big leagues.
Yeah, and I think obviously you're looking like you're setting off on that path really well, mate. NLC hopefully will be incredibly successful, and players like you are going to be what makes this league successful. So thank you so much for being a part of it and being so bloody good, mate. Right, we'll let you go, and I hope you wish you luck for your next game, and obviously congratulations again for beating Excel.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya. All right, guys, discuss. Big point there. Max.
I just have to say, he is not wrong. He didn't have to play the 2v2 mid. He never had to. Like, and this was the problem we immediately identified last week with BTXL. Like, we didn't know how this was going to work out because Special had to unlock himself alone. He had to make these roams alone. Taxa never set that up for them. This was a game where Taxa had to play through mid. He had all the setup in the world. It's Twisted Fate versus Zoe. He had all the setup in the world to do it with his Lee Sin, and he did nothing in that regard. And there was so much free time for the Vayne to scale up on bot, and their mid game, you could see how desperate they were. Goldberg correctly identifies these guys were over grouping. Think how many times you saw them be 4 or 5 man in a lane, trading one lane for 3 lanes overall that Riddle was still able to play. So many times we would see Doxy was just able to solo farm and pin tower. I remember a 5-man grouping on bot where Zoe managed to get the turret to basically 1 HP on midsection alone, deny so many ways. That's just solo XP time for all of them. And all this time, what are they really getting for it? Maybe 1 kill and denying 2 waves? All great, brilliant. They have divided that equivalent and more so over the rest of their team. One team was playing League of Legends better than the other one in this game for sure. The other one was just playing catch up versus Rayhei, and they lost that.
Yeah, and I think the way I'd highlight it is that it was essentially, Special was a crutch for Excel, and with him gone, it's very difficult to find someone who's going to fill that similar role. I don't think the burden is on Hatrix here. It's absolutely on how they play around the mid lane and critically on Taxa. And when you're playing up against the strong junglers we have in this league, we have Maxi, we also have Dan. Maxwell now joined, who, at least at his peak, was obviously a formidable force. I don't think you can get away with doing that again, especially if your game plan is to try and lean towards bot. As you said, a kill here, a kill there, just not enough. And it felt like Riddle went into this game understanding that is Excel's game plan. They called them out on it and they just demolished them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I don't know. If we don't have time for 1 point, you can just take it away.
No. Please, Goldberg.
Okay.
I know you were keen, so.
All right. So I just want to say to you, you're saying up and coming jungler too, right? But let's not forget, Maxi has come second place in New Masters before too. He's even been on FlyQuest Academy too, right? And even though NA is probably not the best scouting ground to actually improve yourself, I feel like this was really what I needed for him to come back here and just make these statement games. Because I feel like for Maxi, he's happened up and down in career, and he needed to get back on a pathway that could say, I am a good jungler. And this game, he really did prove it. Obviously, the Nidalee into Lee Sin matchup, you are going to have the better clearer, and I do think that he was kind of greedy with his clear every now and then. But to me, the fact that he's able to perform so well, I feel like he was so mechanically gifted in some of these fights as well. If you narrow it down and you want to what review it, I feel like you should take a look at how he actually played this out at the Nidalee, because it was really impressive looking at.
I mean, just Spears was so consistent.
I mean, whereas I do agree with you guys, I do think this kid has a lot of potential. I'm definitely not about to say he's the best jungler in Denmark yet, and I do think that if he's looking for an area to improve, his opening clears are one that he needs to look at very carefully. You should not be backing at 540 for your first back as Nidalee of all junglers, for sure, especially not in this matchup, especially not with how little Taxer is doing around the map. There are still things here that are kind of unforgivable, but I do think he has a lot of talent. I'm very excited to see what happens when he goes up against Stan. He was 4 levels up this game. He was the highest level for so long, and that's even with those early errors.
I feel like we could talk about this game for a very long time, but I'm going to need to cut it here because we are going to go to a quick break. When we're back, we have Eminem versus Dusty. Don't go anywhere.